Would you trust your own family if something just didn't feel right? In the heart of Alabama, a 19-year-old girl vanishes without a trace. But Brittany Wood's disappearance was only the first thread pulled from a disturbing, cruel, and twisted web, one that had been hiding in plain sight right inside her own family. What first seemed like just another missing person case quickly unraveled into a monstrous network of abuse, lies, and devastation. Behind the smiling faces in old family photos, there was a hell of sexual crimes, neglect, and perversion, entangling uncles, aunts, family friends, and even her own mother. And the question that still haunts everyone to this day, 13 years later, sends chills down the spine. What really happened to Brittany? Welcome to Urban Hauntings. Here, we dive deep into mysteries, paranormal stories, and true crime, always with a powerful and immersive approach. If you're into this kind of content, help support the channel. Like the video, drop your theories in the comments, share it with other fans of the supernatural and true crime. And don't forget to subscribe with the notification bell turned on. Your engagement makes all the difference and helps us keep growing. Now, let's get into today's story. Brittany Wood was just a 19-year-old girl, but her soul already carried deep scars. A young mother to a baby girl, she was trying to move on with her life in Mobile, Alabama, caught between fragmented memories and a past no one wanted to talk about. In May of 2012, she left home saying she was going to visit an uncle. That was the last time anyone ever saw her. What seemed like just another night quickly turned into silence, and that silence became a suffocated scream that still echoes today. Her car was found abandoned. No note, no sign, just emptiness, and a chilling feeling that this wasn't just a simple disappearance. Family members seemed anxious, dodging questions. Something behind the scenes felt rotten, old, and deeply rooted. The local media began to speculate, but those close to Brittany already knew. She had been speaking out about terrible things for a while, and her disappearance might not have been a coincidence. It took authorities 3 whole days to officially register the case. 3 precious days. Enough time for any trace, any clue to vanish forever. Brittany's mother hesitated. She said, maybe she just ran away. But who runs away without even taking a toothbrush? Who disappears and leaves a baby girl behind without a word? Something was wrong, terribly wrong. And that something started pointing to one name, Donnie Holland. Donnie was Brittany's uncle. According to witnesses, he was the last person to see her alive. She had reportedly gone to him to deal with something personal, but no one knew exactly what that was. And just 2 days later, Donnie was dead. A gun, a shot to the head. A supposed suicide that raised far more questions than it answered. From that point on, what looked like a tragic family drama turned into a full-blown nightmare. While Brittany's baby cried at home, too young to understand why her mother hadn't come back, investigators began putting the pieces together. And what they found was darker, more twisted, and more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Because Brittany Wood's disappearance wasn't the whole story. It was only the doorway to one of the biggest child abuse scandals in recent American history. As detectives dug deeper into Brittany's past, things stopped being confusing and started becoming revolting. What began as a simple search for a missing young woman quickly exposed the hidden horrors within the Wood family. Phones were seized, computers were examined, and what surfaced was the confirmation of something truly horrifying. There was a child abuse ring operating behind the walls of that home. And the number of people involved was unbelievable. At least 11 individuals directly connected to Brittany's family were identified as participants. Uncles, aunts, close friends, even her own mother. The crimes ranged from child sexual abuse to grooming, digital exploitation, and the production of abusive content. It was a sick, repetitive structure, with unspoken rules, and victims raised to believe they should never speak a word. Brittany was one of those victims, and she may have died trying to stop it from happening to others. Investigators from Baldwin County, Alabama, said they had never seen anything so systematic. This wasn't an isolated case. It was a culture of generational violence, passed from adult to adult like a cursed inheritance. The most terrifying part? Some of the children didn't even realize they were being abused. They had been raised in that environment, taught from a young age that this was normal. The reports came in waves. Each new arrest brought another confession, and each confession revealed another victim. Police uncovered videos, photos, logs, messages, overwhelming evidence. And still, there were people trying to cover it up, justify it, or downplay what had happened. Some neighbors said, "It's just media hype." Others remained silent. But the numbers didn't lie. The Brittany Wood case was no longer just a disappearance. It was the tip of an iceberg made of horror, neglect, and deep-rooted family perversion. All of it hidden in plain sight for years. The interrogations kept piling up. Mass arrests, testimonies, children removed from danger, families torn apart. At the time, the press began calling it Alabama's worst family sex crime scandal. And in a tragic twist of fate, it was Brittany's absence that ended up saving other lives. Because even in her disappearance, she forced the spotlight to turn toward the place no one wanted to look. The real monster was living inside the house. 2 days after Brittany's disappearance, Donnie Holland, the uncle she was supposed to visit, was found dead with a gunshot wound to the head. The scene was described as isolated, and the official version was released quickly: suicide. But nothing about that death felt simple. Donnie was one of the main names linked to the abuse ring, and he was also the last person to see Brittany alive. The timing, the location, the weapon, everything raised more questions than answers. The gun was found near his body, but with no clear fingerprints. The bullet had entered at a strange angle, unusual for a suicide. Donnie was inside a car parked in a remote rural area. His family claimed he had been showing signs of emotional instability, but investigators didn't rule out another possibility: execution. Because if Brittany knew too much, Donnie did too, and what he could reveal might have been too dangerous for the others involved. Donnie's daughter, Wendy Holland, was already under investigation for abuse. After her father's death, the pressure on her only intensified. Behind closed doors, rumors were circulating among officers. Donnie had allegedly met with Brittany that night to talk about the accusations. Brittany had supposedly threatened to expose everything, to face the entire ring, to break the cycle. But something went terribly wrong that night, and 2 days later, he was dead. Donnie's suicide was the trigger for a new phase in the investigation. Documents, text messages, and testimonies began to surface. Donnie had already been named in previous reports, but was always shielded by the family's complicit silence. His death was seen by some as an act of desperation, by others as a cover-up. The problem was that with him gone, the chances of finding Brittany alive were slipping away by the hour. As the city of Mobile tried to make sense of what was unfolding, investigators raced against time. But what frightened them the most was the coldness of those involved. Some cried in front of cameras. Others denied everything. But the truth had already started seeping through the cracks, and Donnie, dead in the middle of it all, might have been the key, or the first sacrifice in a pact of silence that lasted far too long. While news outlets showed Brittany's face as just another missing young woman, a little child waited for her at home. It was her daughter. Still in the earliest years of life, she couldn't understand why her mother wasn't coming back. Her grandparents, trying to protect the girl's fragile emotions, told her Brittany had gone shopping, but as the days went by, the little girl started to sense it. Something wasn't right. Her mother's absence left a hole that no one could fill. She began waking up at night, crying and calling for her mom. She refused to eat. She spent hours staring out the window. Her grandparents, heartbroken, tried to maintain a routine, but the weight of the truth grew heavier with each passing day. The innocent lie they told at first became yet another burden. How do you explain that her mother vanished after visiting someone in the family? How do you talk about an uncle who shot himself? How do you say that maybe she's never coming back? The local media kept following the investigation, but behind the walls of the Wood family home, there was nothing but despair. Brittany's mother shifted between pain and guilt. She had known her daughter had endured horrible things growing up. She had heard the whispers, the insinuations, the muffled phone conversations, but she never acted, never confronted it. And now her granddaughter was left motherless, possibly because Brittany had tried to break free from that toxic cycle of abuse. Brittany's daughter was taken in by other relatives, but the shadow of trauma hovered over everyone. Her mother's name became taboo in conversation. Photos were packed away in boxes, and yet her presence couldn't be erased. The little girl would draw pictures of her mom, write pretend notes, create stories where Brittany came back to get her. The pain was silent, but deep, a scream that never made it out of her mouth, but tore her apart inside. Brittany's absence wasn't just physical. It was an emotional wound that scarred her daughter, her family, and the entire community. Because when a victim disappears, she takes with her stories, memories, and truths that may never be told again. And for that child, time didn't bring healing. It only made the questions louder. Where is my mom? Why didn't she come back? And most painfully, who took her away from me? Over time, the case stopped being just a local scandal. It became a symbol of a system's failure to protect the innocent. As the investigation moved forward, more and more names connected to the Wood family appeared in the reports, and each one seemed worse than the last. In total, 11 people were arrested, including uncles, aunts, Brittany's own mother, and even close family friends. It was a complete moral collapse, now playing out in courtrooms across the state. The charges ranged from child rape to the production and distribution of child pornography. Brittany's aunt, Wendy Holland, received the harshest sentence, 219 years in prison. Other sentences ranged from 5 to 80 years. But to many, no punishment could ever truly reflect the monstrosity of what had been done, because these weren't isolated acts. They were patterns, a network, a legacy of abuse normalized across generations. During the trials, the defense teams tried everything. They blamed mental illness, addiction, childhood trauma. Some cried on the witness stand. Others remained cold, almost indifferent. But the court listened to the victims. Listened to children describing what they endured inside those homes. And each testimony felt like a knife to the heart. The public wept. Jurors squirmed in their seats. And Brittany's name, though she wasn't there, was mentioned again and again as the spark that brought the whole sick system crashing down. The media began calling it one of the worst family sexual abuse scandals in recent American history. Documentaries were made, like Monster in the Shadows, revealing details too dark, too complex to fit into the headlines. And beyond the convictions, a deeper question began to rise. How did this happen? How did neighbors, schools, and authorities all miss the signs? How could so many people suffer in silence for so long? But even after the arrests, something was still missing. Brittany's body, the young woman who opened the gates of hell, had still not been found, and that absence turned the convictions into a kind of incomplete justice. The courts had punished the guilty, but they hadn't brought Brittany back. And for her daughter, who lost far more than just a name in the headlines, the prison bars weren't comforting. They were just a reminder that sometimes evil doesn't come from outside. It begins inside your own family. With so many of the guilty behind bars, one haunting question remained. Why did Brittany disappear? For many, the answer lies in the courage she had to confront her own demons and her family's. Reports suggest Brittany knew what was going on. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a threat to the silence. Her mother believes that on the night she vanished, Brittany confronted Donnie Holland and demanded he stop. She may have even threatened to expose everything. That possibility changes the entire narrative. Because if Brittany was killed, and every clue suggests she was, then it wasn't an accident. It was a silencing. The silencing of a voice that was about to set others free, break the cycle, and bring a rotting network into the light. Donnie's death just 2 days later only adds weight to this theory. He knew the walls were closing in, and Brittany was the key, the only one brave enough to speak the truth. Other theories still circulate today. Some believe other members of the network helped cover up her death, that her body was hidden, discarded, maybe even buried on one of the family's properties. Several areas were searched. Witnesses reported hearing disturbing conversations, but no definitive evidence was ever found. Brittany simply vanished, as if silence itself was stronger than justice, as if the truth was still being smothered. There's also a darker, more unsettling theory that Brittany might have been trafficked. That, after confronting her family, she was handed over to others as a way to solve the problem without leaving a trace. The lack of blood, signs of struggle, or a body only fuels this possibility, but it opens the door to another horror. What if Brittany is still alive, trapped somewhere, erased from the world, waiting for a rescue that never came? No one knows for sure what happened that night, but every theory shares the same core. Brittany was the only piece that didn't fit, the only one who dared to challenge, question, confront. And like many women who do that, she was silenced. And the question that still echoes like an open wound remains. What if someone had believed her sooner? Even after all the horror that was exposed, Brittany's loved ones refused to give up. Vigils began to be held in Mobile, Alabama. People gathered with candles, holding signs with her face and the phrase that became a symbol of hope, "Bring Brittany home." Every year in May, new gatherings were organized, but over time the crowds thinned. Only those closest to her kept the flame alive. Flyers were posted in neighboring towns. Online communities mobilized. Volunteer search parties were formed. They searched forests, lakes, and old family properties, but nothing. Not a single strand of hair, not a shred of clothing. Brittany's absence became an emotional void, not just for her daughter, but for the entire city. Because Mobile stopped being just the place where a young woman vanished, and became the place that lived with monsters without ever noticing. The 2021 documentary Monster in the Shadows brought renewed attention to the case. It revealed raw, previously unseen details, the voices of victims, interrogation tapes, fragments of a system that failed to protect. The film reignited outrage, but also exposed a hard truth. The Brittany Wood case isn't an exception. It's a reflection of a cruel, silent reality faced by thousands of children across the United States. Despite the convictions, no change is enough when the truth remains incomplete. Justice punished some, but Brittany's absence still aches like it happened yesterday. The case led to legal reforms in how child abuse reports are handled in Alabama, but the wound is still open, and time, instead of healing it, has only deepened the fear that the truth may never come to light. The city wants justice, but more than anything, they want answers. Today, over 13 years after she disappeared, Brittany Wood is remembered not only as a victim, but as a symbol, a warning, a voice that was silenced, but still echoes in every vigil, every glance from her daughter, every scar left behind. Because until Brittany's body is found, until her story is truly closed, the silence will keep screaming. And the question will remain, where is Brittany Wood? Some cases end with convictions, others with bodies, but the cruelest ones end in silence. Brittany disappeared, but she exposed the darkest secret her family had kept. She paid the ultimate price trying to save others. And now, all that's left are memories, trauma, and a void no one's been able to fill. Will the truth ever rise to the surface? Or will the secret Brittany uncovered remain buried with her forever? If you made it this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more real and disturbing stories like this one. Help us give a voice to the victims. Share this video, and never forget, the worst monsters aren't always hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they live inside your own home.